Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the new GA podcast, The Square Ball, powered by William Hill, with myself, Dave McIntyre, and Lee Keegan. Episode 1 is in the bank. It was a really good insight into the career of former Kerry footballer Darren O'Sullivan. So wherever you get your podcasts, or indeed if you want to log on to YouTube, you'll be able to get that episode in full. He gave us a really good insight into his highs and lows as a Kerry footballer, his mindset as he broke onto the Kerry panel, the difficulty of being the Kerry captain at times in his career as well. And so that is well worth a listen. You've decided to come back for another weekly.
Oh, it's okay. I'm not getting grilled.
And we're really happy with our guest today. We've set the standards high in week 1, so we couldn't let them drop going into the second week. And I think it's fair to say that we haven't done that. We've got former Tyrone midfielder, one of the greats of the game, Seán Cavanagh, lined up.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Obviously, work with Seán RT. Probably an old adversary in my heyday as well. And just a guy that, I suppose, when I was coming onto the scene, he was just an all-round brilliant footballer. And I'm really looking forward to discussing different aspects of his career, particularly around Tyrone back in 03, 5 and 8 and different situations. And just, again, similar to last week, getting insight into what made them so brilliant and the tough times they had as well.
We talked last week about your All-Ireland final record. 7 finals, no wins, without wishing to go through it all again.
Just there was one draw.
There was one. Well, yeah, still no wins.
No wins. I know. I'm trying to justify it.
That Tyrone team turn up 3 times and they walk away with Sam Maguire 3 times. Like, it's incredible.
It is. And I suppose, and I touched a little bit last week. Majority of the time we came up probably against the greatest team that there ever was, and it's hard to disagree with that. And a lot of people in the circles will say Dublin were the best. In other situations, we played Donegal. We mentioned last week that was very new territory for us, but probably then later in my career, the Tyrone game, we probably just didn't really perform that one. That's probably one of those where we didn't turn up, we didn't put a performance in to be even proud of, and one that we probably just chalked down as probably a slip, really. Like.
Now, you guys wouldn't always have marked each other. Obviously, Seán spent a lot of his time in midfield. He spent other parts of his career in the inside forward line when you were maybe further out the field. But we do remember one major coming together. It led to probably one of the darkest moments in Seán's career. We're going to get into it, but there's no question, and I don't think once he sits next to us that he's going to dispute this fact. He blames you for getting him sent off in the 2016 All-Ireland semi-final, which could have been, and in his mind in the build-up to the game, if Tyrone had won it, was going to be his final season as a Tyrone footballer, and you got him sent off. Discuss.
I'd like to put a bit of clarity around stuff as well. I wouldn't say, like, you know, people that know me and I played and Seán would have come across that in 16. Again, you mentioned we didn't mark each other regularly, and I was detailed to mark him. He played full forward that year, and we seen him as a serious threat to us. So I got the detailed job, and I played on the edge. So I suppose to say I got him sent off, you know, listen, I provoked him in certain situations, but as a top defender, and I like to think I was up there, that's what you have to do.
Provoke them how?
Well, like you get in their face, you have a little nick at them during off the ball, but nothing that's going to, or Seán in particular hasn't faced before, or other top forwards. You know, I suppose they've come accustomed to that kind of tension, and it's nothing that he wouldn't have come up against. So
are we talking about a little bit of pulling and dragging, or are we talking anything more sinister?
No, just pulling and dragging. But I think maybe, and Seán will touch himself, maybe there's a bit of frustration that the game was probably getting away from a little bit, and definitely things escalated after half time. Where I would have said maybe I actually got the brunt of his abuse at that stage, and that's where the yellow cards are branded. And then unfortunately for Seán, when you're on a yellow and the game is slipping like that, or you're chasing it, you put in, you know, a malicious tackle. I'm not saying it was, you know, intentional, but that's the line we treaded, and unfortunately he found that out in David Goff's second yellow.
So was it a deserved second yellow for you?
I stayed in the pitch. I was all right. For Seán, like, I mean, he'll tell himself it was a high tackle on Aidan O'Shea, and it warranted a yellow. But I suppose what probably flustered me was, you know, Mickey Harte came out after the game trying to defend it, but there was nothing done that was I wouldn't see any different anyway. It's something I played like that for all my career, and most people that I came up against wouldn't have too much beef with that.
It's going to be interesting talking about Mickey Harte as well, because obviously things are very relevant as regards to Mickey Harte. We're recording this days after the Derry defeat to Armagh, which has obviously garnered an awful lot of headlines. There's been a lot of stuff coming out of Derry this week, so why don't we just get straight into it?
I think so. I'm really looking forward to it.
Coming up, it's Seán Cavanagh. So as we mentioned before the break, today's guest is Seán Cavanagh, Tyrone legend, winner of 3 All-Irelands, 6 Ulster titles, 5 All-Stars, Young Footballer of the Year award, Senior Footballer of the Year award, Thanks for making the time to join us today, Seán.
Great to be here, lads. Thanks for having me.
So he totally refutes the fact that he was responsible for your career potentially ending on a red card in an All-Ireland quarter-final at Croke Park.
He came back for another year. He was okay.
Yeah, the only reason
I had to come back.
So you had known, you were, in your mind, you were done. You were hoping that Tyrone would get to the All-Ireland final that year, and then win or lose, that would be the perfect way to exit stage left.
Yeah, look, I suppose in my mind, was it Tipperary had made it through the semi-final that year, and in fairness, I don't think yous were going all that well, so I suppose in anyone's mind you have a vision of how it all might end, and I suppose there's only one place anyone wants to finish their career, and that's All-Ireland final day in Croke Park. So whenever that draw come out, you start to do the maths and you think, we're motoring well here. Mayo's not going so well, and no disrespect, but I don't think a Tipperary would have beaten us in an All-Ireland semi-final. So you're thinking, perfect way to end. I already had told everyone around me, my family, Mickey Harte, that I was finishing up that year. So it all was in my head leading up to that game that it is a matter of getting over Mayo, and I would finish in Croke Park in All-Ireland final day.
Because it's funny, I remember that year because we weren't going well. We were beaten by Galway, and we're probably in a little bit of life support through the qualifiers. We got a couple of lucky results. I think Derry brought us to extra time, but ye came in as Ulster winners, and we came through the back door, and there was this lot of talk that this is probably the final nail in the coffin for Mayo now already, and we actually used that pretty well, and we looked at G and we said, do you know what, we actually fancy this today back in Croke Park in the quarterfinal. Like, I think knockout games then were better for us, and we kind of went under the radar a little bit going into that game, I think, because a lot of the talk had been around, not just yourself, but around Tyrone potentially ending in Dublin, and maybe cracking that whip. So
yeah, we felt we were getting close, and probably looking back at it now, it was like a lot of the guys who ultimately went on to win in 21. They were coming on at that stage, so those the McGarrys and Sluddens and Milers and McCurrys and these lads were really starting to find a bit of form. And if I'm honest, I was kind of looking around going, I know my legs aren't going to keep up with these lads. These lads are going to be the future. But yeah, totally thought that we, in a tight game, we thought yous wouldn't have been able to probably cope, because we had come out of the likes of battles with Donegal and McGuinness teams and things like that. So we had 2 or 3 years of that sort of type of football, and we were thinking, well, in a tight game, we should be able to have enough here. We've been through enough. And in an open game, we felt we could, and I think you maybe hadn't been scoring very well, and I was thinking, you know what, if this thing opens up, we've got the legs, we've got the scores, we've got plenty of, but in fairness, in that game, you played us well. You took the game into a tight game and backed yourselves and got the scores when you needed to, and shut down a lot of the ammunition that we had in our team, and I think it spooked us, and I think we, and even me as a person, I think we probably were looking too far down the line. I think we probably dismissed yous, even though we always had a problem with you, and Mayo, as in you's always caused us problems whenever we met you. Sometimes you have a team that is a bogey team, and we always knew there was a danger there, but it felt that year that we probably took one eye off the ball going into that game and underestimated you somewhat.
Because actually, I think we actually transformed a little bit in terms of our style, because you're right, most teams would look at us and said, you know what, we can go at these lads, there's going to be scores here. I think we ended up putting Alan Dillon and Kevin McLaughlin as sweepers, which was so new to us in terms of, we might have done it once or twice before in the past. And I was just saying today before you came on, I like, your send-off was probably highlighted between two of us, but like, I think a lot of it probably ended a bit of frustration because the game plan didn't work for you more so
totally
than provoking.
Totally, nothing was working for us, particularly in the first half. And look, in fairness, you're a nightmare to complete to mark as well. And physically, I suppose, and in fairness to David Goff, he probably was allowing a fair bit of legal banging and bumping, which suited us the very best. But you were very good at it. So I was struggling to get space, and with me struggling to get space, our forward line as well wasn't really firing in that first half, and absolutely. I got frustrated, the rest of the team got frustrated. Using that sort of thing that was thrown out at us a lot of time, you probably out Tyrone in a lot of sense, because we felt we that side of football, we had some level of superiority around it, but in that first half in particular, you took us to a place that we couldn't cope.
So I was on commentary duty that day, and I remember thinking, this is tragic. This is a guy, one of the greats of the game, one of the best midfielders of his generation. And he's brought so much joy to so many Tyrone people over the last really 15 years, going back to your under 21 and minor days under Mickey. And this is how it's going to end. So if I felt that way in the commentary position, what was it like for you when that red card?
We couldn't feel like that because we still had to beat them. So I'm sorry to put some emotion on you there, but
Yeah.
Talk to us about the aftermath of that red card.
There was, and I even coming here today thinking about that game. Most definitely, it's my darkest hour. Darkest hour as a person, let alone darkest hour as a sports person. You know, as captain of that team, I'm one of these guys. And no matter what, when I was 19, I was exactly the same. That whenever Tyrone lost, it was my fault. I automatically went to the point where it was my fault. And then you look at that game and you think, right, well, and by the way, I'd never been sent off in my life before. So I suppose I'm thinking, this is your final game. You've just been sent off. Your team's just lost by a point. We missed a couple of chances maybe to salvage a draw towards the end of it. And your career's now over. And if I'm honest, and even my wife at the time, I remember flagging this up, towards the end of my career in those latter sort of 3 or 4 years, I become much more desperate to try and drag us over the line. I probably had that Naughties team that had leaders everywhere, that had talent, ability, doggedness, everything you'd ever wanted. And then that team dissipated and I was kind of the last man standing, and there was a new team coming. And so those years at 14, 15, 16, 17 was the building of a new team, but I was still holding on to, you can eke out one more All-Ireland final, one more All-Ireland win potentially, and in my head that's how I wanted to go. But yeah, I definitely become much more desperate. I was doing things out of character, but yeah, that day essentially I never spoke to anyone in the change rooms. In fairness, I was gutted on the sideline. I remember a few of the guys having to pull me off the subs bench. In fairness to him, I remember Andy Moore, and I was kind of walking across, and I was teared up, and I couldn't even look at the supporters and the Cusack stand. I remember Andy Moore running across to me and sort of hugging me and wished me all the best, which I probably never thanked him for, but I am forever indebted to it. It was a very nice thing to do. And yeah, got on the bus, never said a word to anyone, got lifted in the Carrickdale and Uri, got back to the Mayo Square. Harry Lahern and myself and Colm were travelling together, pulled up in the Mayo Square about a mile from my home, and I says, Harry, look, drop me out here, I just want to go for a walk. Harry never thought anything of it. I hadn't really spoken on the way home. And essentially walked down the River Blackwater, runs along the Mayo football pitch. Felt like I wanted to just go and clear my head, and that was maybe at 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, and I continued walking. It was like a Forrest Gump sort of moment. I walked to the Mayo pitch, and then I thought, you know what, I'll go on ahead a bit further. I was obviously carrying a lot of shame in my head, and a lot of anger. Just that summed up that whole day. I was too emotional. But yeah, long story short, essentially ended up walking, I don't know, I'd guess probably 10, 15, 20 miles, and was picked up by a taxi man at 1:25 in the morning outside Dungannon, and I walked sort of country roads. I almost got knocked down by a car at one stage actually, and the car still never saw me. It was like on a road that there was only room for one car really, and I was walking on. It was pitch black dark, but yeah, I went to another place that day. I just my mind went, and I was never going to hurt myself. But I didn't want to be at home. Didn't want to face my family. Didn't want to face my friends.
You knew you weren't going to hurt yourself, but like your wife Fanula.
I know.
What time do you get home? Like?
And ironically, that's I had a pair of shorts on, a pair of Tyrone shorts and a t-shirt, and I left my phone, my car keys, my wallet all in Harry Lahern's car, football bag obviously. So I had nothing with me whatsoever, and.
So she's ringing Harry saying, where's Seán?
At about 7:30, I think, or 8 o'clock in the evening, Matty McGleenan's son, I had walked out towards Eglish, where they're from, and his son had passed me in a car, and he had actually stopped and said to me, and you think of this now and you cringe and you go, this is ridiculous, but essentially he stops and he shouts out the window, Seán, are you alright? They're okay. And I was like, no, I'm grand, man. I'm just out for a walk here. but it was pitch black dark at about 8 or 9 o'clock on a Sunday night or Saturday night, whatever night it was.
Can I ask you, so when you did this, and this is, I know families, did you find solace when you walked like that? Did you find some peace after, I suppose, when you're on your own, sometimes you try to declutter everything from your head. Did you find anything from it?
I'd say I did, yeah.
Okay.
Ironically, and that's the type of person I am. And often people will say to me, even now, what do you like doing on holidays, or what's your favorite times in your life? And a lot of it is like I'm sort of happy just on my own, sitting on a rock overlooking water, thinking. And I suppose that day, the last thing I wanted to do was go and start talking about football. And it sounds ridiculous because I had 2 young girls. I had my wife, who isn't even a Tyrone supporter and doesn't really care about football, if I'm honest. So I had a home to go to that was a safe haven. And I suppose my wife then was very quick to point that out to me, that she didn't really care about Seán the footballer, but in my head it kind of let everyone down around me. So,
but Seán, you have to, I suppose, for yourself, and I'm not agreeing or disagreeing, obviously it's tough on your family and stuff, but when you've given so much time to football like yourself did, and what you did in the game, it's very hard just to switch that mentality, say, you know, it's over, and on the back of probably, you know, a disappointing result, and probably for yourself individually, performance wise, it's very hard to just turn around and say, you know what, it's over, I'm going to accept it. Like there was going to be some kind of, and maybe in your way, it probably was a different way of doing it, maybe not the correct way, but
and ironically, and you asked me to define solace, I probably did, and within quite quickly then, and that's probably the type of person I always was. I was always very hard on myself in the immediate aftermath, and then maybe a day later I was back out of football training. That was it. I was able to park things and then move on very quickly and go into a mode where I let things go very quickly as well. So
well, that's great. Can I ask, so if after bad results, what was Seán like after good results though? Big gaze, big performances. Was there Seán that let loose and let go and enjoyed the moment, or were you Seán, like you were speaking of now, that went straight back to football in some capacity?
Ironically, and I kind of mentioned this before as well, whereby like, so the best, the highest achievement that I've ever had was All Ireland final 2008, man of the match. I don't know, 5 points from play. Probably knew at that stage I was likely to win an All-Star. We had won All Ireland without Peter Canavan, which was always going to be a massive thing because kind of he was my hero and everyone else's hero in Tyrone. So to do it that day and the manner in which we did, was sort of coming from we're very much underdogs that year after losing to Down in Ulster. That was probably as good as it got. And ironically, I remember lying at 2:30 in the morning, and we were in the City West, and I remember hearing the traffic on the N7 passing, and all I could think about was, why didn't you shoot for goal rather than fist the ball over the bar? I think it was like a 3rd point. I'd come in along the Cusack stand side and everything opened up for me, and I should have scored a goal, that's the reality, but I decided not to, and to this day I beat myself up about it. So I probably am as a person. I'm very self-deprecating, and I think that comes from my father, it probably comes from my grandfather. My dad's one of these guys, he's never said to myself or Colin, well done, I'm proud of you. He's never hugged me, he's never shook my hand. I know he loves me, and his father was probably the same. I don't know whether it's an Irish thing or whatnot, but
your psychologist probably try to do more.
I think I've always been hard on myself, and I'm still hard on myself. Ironically, a lot of people probably don't know that side of me, but because they see me sometimes on TV, and you maybe come across in a certain way that people maybe think, oh yeah, he's sort of maybe slightly arrogant, maybe slightly forward, but I'm very much not, and I'm very much hard on myself, and I'm harder on myself than anyone else. Anyone else is on me as well.
So it's a large. I know you feel you got your work ethic from your parents, but that obsession, which is the name of your book, The Obsession. Do you think some of your drive came from trying to get your dad's approval over those years?
Yeah, I've no doubt in that. Yeah, like there's and it's crazy because now look, I have 2 girls and 2 boys, and you know, the eldest boy, he's Seán as well. He's only 6, and I almost see him there. We're doing little go games and things with the club under 6s, and I almost look at him at times and think you're almost too happy. And I remember hearing, reading something about like Cristiano Ronaldo talked about his son and said, I don't think my son will achieve what I achieved because he hasn't got the darkness. And it's almost that resonated with me. That resonated with me because it almost is something that you're, I don't know whether you're always chasing or you're always, I've never been happy. And ironically, leaving county football was actually much easier than I thought. So I'd always built up the story in my head that I was never ever going to be happy after I stopped pulling on the Tyrone jersey, and then I stopped pulling on the Tyrone jersey, and I thought, God, there's actually a bit of lightness almost taken off me, a little because I was carrying everything on my shoulders.
What was it all for? Like, if anyone hasn't read your book, Damien Lawler Ghost wrote it for you. It's just an amazing read, and like I remember you telling a story about the qualifier defeat to Armagh 2014. The next night you were in the gym. I remember being on an all-star tour in the States, God, 7 or 8 years ago. We had a rough week. We were eating shite all week, boozing all week. And I went down to the gym just to feel a little bit better about myself. There's Andy Moore and David Clark in the gym. This is November. I'm just saying, what are these freaks doing in the gym? Like, their next championship match isn't for months. You're talking, I'm just wondering.
Well, Sean in Melbourne, remember we went for a trip out and we had a big night out the night before. And just covers went down to do a stretch. So Sean was in the gym half an hour before us.
So, like,
Did
you enjoy
I know,
it?
no, yeah, and
Well, you said you're trying it. You were looking for your father's approval. You were desperate to reignite the noughties in those teen years when you knew you were into your last 5 or 6 years. You don't seem to have. You just said that you didn't necessarily like enjoy the wins because despite that man of the match performance in 08, you're thinking about the one you should have stuck in the net when you went for a point instead. You've just described how badly you took that defeat to Mayo in 2016. And now you say you only felt a bit of lightness and different percent of perspective when you retire. So what was it all for?
I know, and I often wonder that, and although like I'm incredibly proud of it, it's not as if it's something that like whenever I almost, and I don't know whether there's a psychology to this or something, but I would meet people now in London in work capacity or something, and I would build up a relationship with them, and I would know them for 6 months or a year or a couple of years, and then they'll ring me someday and they'll go, Seán, you used to play a sport, and I goes, yeah, I know what I played a bit of sport, and they're like, no, but like you've got like a Wikipedia page or whatever. I was looking for your phone number and I googled your name to see your office number. I almost have forgotten about that, Seán. You know, I was able to almost like draw a line in that sort of Seán the player, and yeah, I now look at my son, and I do ask myself that question. I almost ask myself that question: what would I want my son to live the life in a sporting capacity that I lived? And I'm not sure of the answer. I'm not sure I'd want him to go through because look, I had insomnia. I never really slept before games. Whenever I was injured, I laced myself full of anti-inflammatories. I've had surgery in virtually every single joint in my body. Taken more concussions than whatever be advisable nowadays, particularly under the protocols that we have. So you do, and here, by the way, if you walked into my house today and you walked around my entire house, you'll not find one jersey, one trophy, one medal. Nothing. There's nothing in my house that says that I played football.
Is that because you wanted that, or
it didn't match him with Fanilla's Dakar was one thing, but it's not something that I never. I remember used to give you the crystal balls for winning man of the matches. I must have, I don't know, 15 or 20 of those. It's still in the boxes. Never even come out of the box.
Where are the 3 Celtic crosses then?
My mum and dad's house. I was living in my mum and dad's house whenever they were won, so it was just you used to get the medals, just throw them in the corner.
You could do it all again, would you? Like, was it worth it? Doesn't sound to me.
I'm
not sure.
I'm fascinated because Seán, if he's like Derek Seán playing career, you found light now. But so if I'm sure you have reflection periods of time. Do you look back and do you find, do you know what, I love that, or do you know what, I'm happy it's over now, or do
ironically, like I think I loved the strive, and I think as a person I loved the chasing something, because I have that now in business as well, where I'm trying to grow a practice and it's chasing and it's growing, and I get a very similar sort of feeling. I always thought I would struggle to get that feeling, or I go out for a run. I was out for a run with my older brother last night, who's a real incredible runner. And I'll even get a similar feeling trying to chase him because I can never catch him. But I think it was that striving for something. Striving was the thing that I enjoyed the most. The end result of getting a medal or getting a trophy didn't worry me. being some level of a personality from a sporting capacity. I never wanted that. I still don't, like, even, okay, I do the RT piece. If that was turned off tomorrow morning, I don't think it would annoy me either. I think it's something that I could take or leave in my life. And I never sought out fame or any sort of level of personality. So yeah, I'm strange probably being in that sense, but like that's just.
And the medals in your house, sorry, do you think your father is proud of them in the house? Do you think?
Oh yeah, no
deep down?
doubt. My mum and dad.
Love them.
My mum and dad. Like, and I'll often meet someone who would say, "Oh, I met your mum and dad," and the first thing they'd say is, "Oh yeah, I'm father of Seán and Colin Cavanagh or whatever, or mother." So they do. Like I know they're very proud of everything. Myself and
What do
Colin
you think he would think, Don, if he was listening to this podcast now, when you say that my father never said he was proud of me or never?
Oh, no,
said, well
he's heard me say it, but I'd say it in his company. It's not a something.
doesn't bother him.
It's just the type of man he is. He's
Yeah.
an Irish man, and he doesn't show feelings and
just the culture.
emotions. It's just
Yeah.
one of those things. But yeah,
It's interesting because we were chatting last week and I told Lee that I didn't believe him when he said he doesn't think about the fact that he played 7 All-Irelands, didn't win any of them. But listen to you now, that it wasn't actually about winning the All-Irelands.
But our
Which
obsession,
makes it more sense that you're able to get over that.
we're similar Mayo. We didn't win it, but the chase is just
Yeah.
infectious. I mean,
you were chasing for a bit, like.
we're still chasing. Like, we're upset. It becomes an obsession. For and it's great to hear Seán telling his side of, like, I just put a line through it and that's it, because life is too big and there's too much going on. I think that should just. I feel like I'd waste years just dwelling on it all the time, because I did it. I enjoyed it. Had a great crack at it. Didn't get the medal, but life keeps spinning. The world keeps spinning. It doesn't stop because I didn't win a medal or did win a medal. So
It was interesting before you came in. We were talking about the build up to that red card, and Lee felt maybe there was a culmination of a 60-minute spell where you were getting increasingly frustrated. The game plan wasn't going. He was hanging out of you, and he was kind of intimating that there was a bit of pulling and dragging, as Lee, how you described it. But
fair enough.
He insisted there was nothing overly sinister,
No,
and
no.
certainly nothing that you hadn't experienced as a player before.
Totally.
And it reminded me of that game in 2005 where you're playing Cavan in an Ulster semi-final.
That was much more difficult to take. Like, Lee was a much superior player to virtually most players I ever played against. But that day in 2005, I didn't want to play football. That day in 2005, when I was getting essentially gobbed on my face repeatedly, and I remember one time, I'm not even sure who was refereeing, but I remember turning around to the referee and the gob laying on my face and saying, like, what can you do about this? And he said to me, I can't do anything. There's nothing in the rules to allow me to change that. And I remember walking into the change room at half time, and I just sat there, and Mickey Harte came over to me.
You've been bitten as well.
I was bitten on the inside of my leg, yeah. And I was
By the same
I
guy.
was nipped all over my body. He fell on me one stage, bit the inside of my leg, and I walked in at half time. And you go into the change room in Clonus, the one we were in, the like 90% of the change room was on your left hand side, and on the right hand side there was like a couple of physio tables or something set up. And I went and sat there on my own, and Mickey Harte came over to me and he goes, "What's wrong with you?" I was in tears. And he said, "Are you okay? What's wrong with you?" And I says, "No." I says, "Don't want to go back out. Don't want to play football." Simple as that. And in fairness,
but it wasn't exactly football they were playing with.
no, it wasn't. It wasn't.
That's-
And it was
that's-
obviously, like, it was before the time of even black cards.
Yeah.
And we talked about that, but like, essentially every time I went to run, he was just banging me and spitting on me, and I thought, what's the point? Like, this isn't the sport I love. And then Conor Gormley came over to me and put the arm around the shoulder at halftime, says, "Give me 2 minutes, I'll get him." And he did.
Was this guy who was marking you throughout that game? I was at that game. I was on the terraces
the
that
ball
day.
was thrown in the second half. I still have no idea what
I know
happened.
who it was.
And the ball was thrown in. Conor Gormley was doing midfield with me, and all four midfielders fell to the ground, and the ball spilled away, and somebody took the ball, and I heard the individual screaming. Conor Gormley had got him, like, in fairness. And I suppose in a moment like that, that's the type of personalities we had around Tyrone at that point, where the likes of Conor and Ricey and these guys, and Hub Hughes, they probably made people like me feel safe. And ironically, as a lot of people would see me now, and because of maybe the incident with Conor McManus, they would often say, sure, you were a very aggressive, sort of dirty player. And I'd be like, no, I was actually one of the nice ones. If you had seen some of the other guys, they were the aggressors. But yeah, no, that day was a very dark place. Yeah.
Well, without wishing to engage in a spate of whataboutery, some of listeners to this podcast, likely non-Tyrone people, will be thinking, here's Seán Cavanagh complaining about the dark arts, about some cynical play, about really sinister physical stuff going on off the ball. A Tyrone footballer, part of a Tyrone team that had a reputation that preceded them. The same way as the Meath team of the late 80s to early 90s had a reputation that preceded them. And you mentioned Conor Gormley, great fella, won Tyrone your first All-Ireland with that outrageous block in the final minutes of the 03 final. That there were many on that team that would be accused by many of engaging in precisely the same behaviour. I'm not saying Conor himself individually, the same behaviour that you're accusing this Cavan player of engaging in.
No, not at all. As in, and look, I'd be the first to admit, was I a saint? No, it wasn't. But did I ever, like, I now obviously speak of these incidents sometimes on the TV, but did I ever spit in someone? Did I ever
not
kick
you
someone? Did I don't?
So
and I
teammates
would say none of my teammates did as well. Did I ever go in to intentionally harm anyone with an elbow or a knee? You know, players know how to hurt one another, and I'd be the first one to admit if I felt. I remember one time Ricey did he drop the knees in one of the McIntyres or something. It wasn't even in a hurting way. It was one of those sort of petulant, silly ways that he done it. And I remember, like, we had joked about him, and look, Ricey could take plenty of abuse, but I don't think there was too many incidents. And look here, open for someone to point them out, but I don't think there was too many incidents in that team that we had challenges that was ever going to hurt anyone. There's plenty of talk. There was plenty of talk, and that's what got a lot of the attention. Ricey talking at Gooch Cooper or Gormley talking at Oshie McConville. And if I'm honest, like we use that sort of trash talk in a motivating way. And if anything, I'd probably look back at it and go, it maybe was a thing that we were a young team. We probably were a little bit afraid of what the opposition could do to us. We hadn't won very much as a county and as a team. And I think that was our way of almost like getting that fear out of our head and allowing us to go to another level.
Would verbally go too far though? I mean, like,
probably at times.
We're talking verbally. You know, we've all come across it. It's, you know, you're crap, you're shy, whatever that kind of would have ever touched the threshold where you're saying, hold on a second, now we're going too far.
Are we talking family members?
It just health. You know.
Well, all I know is I didn't, like, it wasn't me as a person, and I have to say, as an older player, and that's probably something that I remember, like, one night, like, calling Michael Murphy overweight or something. Like, it's like, what are you doing? Like, because silly things like that. I mean, he was doing something similar to me, I think, at the same time, but I certainly wasn't one of those players that went out to try and do that. I'm the first one to admit that, and happy for anyone to call me out on it. But yeah, look, some of our defenders in that team, the likes of Ricey and Gormley, and maybe, they enjoyed that sort of trash talk. You'd heard murmurs that at times people did take offence of it. Now, if you knew Ricey and Gormley personally, you would know that's not their nature. But yeah, I can't speak for them if they did go. What is that line? And if they did, I hope they wouldn't. But yeah, if they did, it did.
Before we move off your intensity and the obsession that you talk about, anytime I've met you, and I've gone way back to when I was a Cub reporter on the beat, and you were at the peak of your powers, like, you're always just an incredible guy to be around, so genuine and open. You brought me up to your offices when you just opened them well over 10 years ago, and you gave me an hour of your time for an interview, which you totally didn't need to do. You've just been this really good fella. But when you speak about your career, when you speak about going missing for all those hours after that Mayo game in 2016, when you talk about always striving for the next thing, I just wondering, do you feel like you were a good person during your Tyrone career? And were you a good husband?
Yeah, like I always enjoyed the, like, I enjoyed being a Tyrone player, enjoyed the training that was involved in it. Like, I'm a very happy person, and it doesn't sound like it sometimes, but like,
you are now.
I'd say I probably
what
always
would Fionnuala
was.
Say about those years from 2010 to 2016?
I demented myself, and it's probably the best way of saying it. And Fionnuala couldn't get her head around how much I demented myself, as in, like, I remember one night, I struggled with knee injuries a lot, and I remember I had this machine called a game ready machine that used to have to lie on the floor, and this sort of big inflatable thing went up around your knee and put compression on it, and it had ice in it. I remember whenever, after every single training, I'd have ice the two knees for an hour, and then went home and put this machine on for an hour. There's times when I was injured, I would have set my alarm for 3 o'clock in the morning and got up and put this machine on. And of course, all the while, Fanilla's looking at me going, you're not wise. Like, you're seriously not wise.
I think most wives say that.
And you know what, they're like... she was right, like, you know, I wasn't. I brought myself to places that you would never, like, and I support a lot of soccer now, and I made a lot of maybe soccer players, and I sort of say similar things to them, and they'd look at me as if not a chance I'd ever do that. So yeah, no, I put myself to extreme places, and
that's like all of that.
It was the
all about you
and sacrifice.
Yeah, you're self-centered.
Totally.
And like
totally.
put yourself first all the time.
Totally. And my family probably missed out on it, and Fionnuala missed out on things. And yeah, I was just total single-mindedness. It was like you're in a state of just whatever collateral damage happened.
Did it change when the kids came?
Is what, sir?
When your kids came along, did you find you're still that excessive, or were you like, did your mind start to flip a little now that, you know what, I'm a father now, I want to be more present, I want to be around these good times that, you know, I might not be around with football, or were you still doing the same things?
Well, I just did them in different proportions, whereby I would always have been there for the kids' bedtime, but then if the kids went to bed, or like reality was, if I was leaving for Gavahi at 6 o'clock at night, I wasn't, you were seeing the kids for 10 minutes and you were going to Gavahi and they were sleeping by the time you get home. So I've just always been used to being busy and sacrificing things. Just as a person, maybe that's the type of person I am, but I've an amazing relationship with all my kids. I love them dearly. I put them to bed every night, drop them to school every morning. I'm lucky I can do those sorts of things now because I own my own business, so I have that flexibility of sort of. But yeah, I sacrifice. Just get used to sacrificing things. That's just the type of person I am.
And with none of the memorabilia and the medals, and you don't talk about it around the house. Like, are the kids fully aware of what you did achieve?
It's funny now because they'll kind of come home, particularly the older ones. The two girls are 13, 11. The boys are 6 and 4. They haven't got a clue really what the crack is. But the girls will come home and they'll say, "Daddy, somebody at school showed me something on YouTube of your greatest moments or something." And to be honest with you, I've never even seen what they're talking about, but. Yeah, they do get that. I suppose they're involved in the football club in the Mayo, and there's a few wee lads that maybe did remember Seán Cavanagh, the player. And yeah, it's nice that I'm very proud that they maybe can get a little bit of enjoyment out of it, because yeah, as mad as it sounds, if I'm totally honest, did I get a massive amount out of it? Probably not. Like I'm proud of it, but you know, I never set out to try and carve something out of it. I probably set out to do it because, yeah, I just wanted. I always loved sports. I was always going to do it in some sport. And I'm back now playing basketball. I'm back running. I've retired 4 or 5 times from the club. I've player managed the club for the last 5 years. I've retired again last October, and I was back at training Monday night this week. and literally Fionnuala looked at me on Monday evening and said, "If you're going back, we need to have a talk." Or well, it's more like you're not going back. But yeah,
are you enjoying that pitch time in a way now that you never did before?
I'm enjoying what I've enjoyed, and even I'm back and played a bit of basketball the last couple of years, and what I enjoy about that is I was able to play it without the pressure, without the insane, if we lose it's all on me. I was able to sort of dip in and out of it. That
you don't become the Seán like before. I find I'm not, you know, that killer that you want to. It's like, you know what, actually this is a bit of crack.
You see it for what you'd hope it is, as in like when it's all said and done, it's a sport, it's a hobby. It's not life and death, but in my head, for those 16 or 17 years that I was playing for Tyrone, it was life and death. Everything mattered. The whole year revolved around trying to get that championship win, trying to win Ulster Championship, trying to win All Ireland. That's all that mattered. Nothing else mattered around that.
It's a pretty good rule of honour, yeah.
Actually, when I was only, I didn't realise even how many Ulster Championships I'd won until you said at the start of that podcast. I genuinely had no idea. If you had asked me beforehand, I couldn't answer.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
I want to move on to Mickey Harte. You were on the Sunday game at the weekend. You talked about Mickey's stubborn streak. Obviously, the knives are out, anyone who's had an axe to grind on Mickey for taking the Derry job has been sharpening them now over the last few days, and they're only waiting to now plunge it deep into his back. Personalities that spring to mind when I think of you and Mickey Harte are Roy Keane and Alex Ferguson. Two people insanely driven who once achieved great things together, had huge amounts of respect for each other, but that relationship has broken down beyond repair. Is that a fair summation of your relationship with Mickey Harte now?
It's definitely been lots of ups and downs in it. There's no point saying otherwise. I would never say beyond repair, because I'm not the type of person that would hold a grudge genuinely. As in, there's lots of people I have fallen out with on football pitch. A lot of people have said a lot of things about me. I remember actually, I'll give you an example before we go into the Mickey Harte thing, of me as a person. I remember I marked Mark O'Shea in an All-Ireland club intermediate semi-final, and a lot of respect for Mark. We ended up winning that day, but he then did a column afterwards sort of saying that I had, because one of the Gaeltacht lads had elbowed one of our lads, and I had called over to the linesman at one stage and said, "Do you not see the elbow?" The lad got sent off, and he did a whole thing about Seán Cavanagh the snitch and blah blah blah, which I don't know, whatever. Like, I was just pointing to the fact that somebody got elbowed in my team. But whenever Mark O'Shea retired then from football, maybe 6 months later, I was the first one to message him and say, "Mark, I thought you're one of the greatest ever footballers I ever played against," which is true. And he messaged me back saying, "God, I didn't think we were almost on chatting terms after what I'd sort of said about you." And I said, "No, like, I'm also one of these people that I don't take things to heart all that much." But like, I suppose with Mickey, we went through those incredible highs of the noughties. We won the All-Irelands. I'm forever indebted to him for that, because he brought that team along that come from sort of minors, 21 seniors, and I got a lot of success from that. I suppose the relationship started to get a little bit fractured then whenever he did a book, and essentially in the book he talked about the roof caving in on me was a exact expression, and a lot of my friends will still slag me about it, whereby the morning of the Cork game in 2009 semi-final, I hadn't slept all night, I had a fever, I was room around Mellon. I remember waking up that morning and I was shivering, and I said to Ryan, I goes, "Here, I'm not in good shape here, boy. I don't know. I feel literally I couldn't get out of bed. So little energy." And I walked down to the breakfast room, and I said to Mickey and Tony Donnelly, the assistant, I said, "Look, lads, I'm in bad shape here. I haven't slept. I have no energy. I can't even face breakfast here. I don't know what I'm going to do." And Mickey said to me, "Look, see how you get on. Go back and take a hour's sleep. See if you can get a bit of rest." Which ironically I did then. I went back to bed, and I missed the team meetings, and I missed the mass and things you used to have in the sort of pre-match mornings. And I got back up, and then I met Tommy McGuigan in the hallway, and Tommy said to me, "Oh, you're not in good shape, Seán." I says, "No, I wasn't, but look, I got a couple hours sleep there. I'm maybe not too bad now." And he says, "Oh, well, I'm in for you." And I says, "Oh, right, that's okay." But I suppose the way he portrayed it in the book then was, Seán couldn't deal with the pressure, and Seán didn't want to play that day. Now I come on as a sub with 20 minutes to go and did my very best, and we were hitting a post. I probably could have a goal towards the end, but I felt maybe there's a little bit of a little bit sort of disloyal to the bond we had at that point, where most people sort of say about, break sort of dressing room things, and frankly, when it was probably a fairly personal thing as me, I didn't really want to talk too much about what sort of state I was in that morning, because I was sick and wasn't feeling. But equally in my head that morning, I was very happy that Tommy was starting as well in front of me, because I was going, look, Tommy's a brilliant player, he'll probably be able to add something that I couldn't add. But yeah, whenever that became the headline, I remember my father-in-law at the time, Charles, had maybe come out as the headline of the paper on the Sunday, and I knew nothing about it, and the double page spread was Harte, the roof caved in.
What year was
Cavanagh.
Mickey's book published?
Must have been just that winter.
Okay, so you had another 7 seasons with him as your manager after that.
Yeah.
Very
So you feel the relationship was fractured then?
We never spoke then. I got married a few months after that, and we never spoke then essentially until February the following year. So that game would have been maybe August 2009, and then in February the following year, I'd actually had ankle surgery or knee surgery or something at the time, And yeah.
Why would you two have been speaking regularly in the close season of previous years?
No, but you probably would have met
Checking,
maybe in a, I don't know, like you'd have been around the training ground or something, or the physios or something, and you would have called in and said, "What way are you?" or "What's the crack?" or whatever. But Mickey as a person, he's not someone that too many people would meet for coffee. Any player would tell you that, or anything. Is not a huge sort of social friendship. It was very much a player manager relationship. But I remember he come to my house then. Was that 5 months afterwards, after the event, and more or less blamed the ghostwriter and said, "Look, I didn't say that. That was never meant to go in."
That probably didn't fly well either, though.
Yeah,
you know,
well,
when someone writes
suppose,
the book and like you've done it yourself, you know, like you're putting the information in it, like, you know, so
totally. And that's the one thing that I was always say about myself, that anything I would say on an RTE or anything I say in anything in my book or any interview I ever do, I would always stand by it. If it is me, that's me. And I know a lot of people aren't going to maybe like it all the time, but yeah, the sort of backtracking to say no, that was a ghostwriter, that wasn't me. Look, the exact phrase my father-in-law, I remember saying to me at the time, he says, "Seán, you can't live in Rome, fight with the Pope." I wanted to continue to be a Tyrone player. I wanted to continue to try and win All Irelands. I loved pulling on the Tyrone jersey, but yeah, it did. It was the beginning of a little bit of up and down between us.
Was that your trust broke, or was it more a loyalty thing that you felt? Because I just listened earlier, you said like in 05, you know, it was like the father figure that came in to help you at half time. And all of a sudden now it feels like that he just kind of thrown that.
Yeah, a little bit like, yeah, probably was a little bit like, hold on, this is someone who and look, of all the things that sort of Tyrone group come through, the one thing we always had was this. It's almost like an unbreakable bond, and you know, obviously Cormac was the most horrendous thing ever, and then obviously Mickey had a deal himself with Michaela, and Paul McGarr was before that, and kind of felt. It went outside the boundaries of what we felt was sort of sacrosanct within that Tyrone team.
You're still a linchpin of that team, like until your powers start to wane, as they naturally do, as time waits for no man. But say between 2010 and 2014, where like you're still the player you were that was winning the All Ireland. So what's the player manager relationship like in those seasons?
Look, I just got on with it, and again, we probably didn't really have very much, like, didn't really change an awful lot, given the fact that we didn't really talk socially anyway. And I'd say if you spoke to any Tyrone player in that Naughties team, a lot of the time, as long as they were playing well, they didn't speak to Mickey, they didn't speak to the manager, they just went on about their business and took instruction and trained hard. So
this is around a time with Lee where there's a lot of speculation where you should be playing. Should be still midfield? Should he be spending time in the inside forward? Should he be a centre forward? Like, were there not discussions around tactics and? Like, you're still you are the leader of that team. Surely he's relying on you to a great extent. And if you're saying the relationship is broken, what was that like?
I wouldn't say at that stage. I did say to him at that time, he come and apologise. I says, look, I was willing to move forward. It wasn't as if I was saying I'm never speaking to you again. It was a case of, look, that's fine. You've apologised, and I've somewhat accepted it. So in a way that which I still want to play for Tyrone. You're still the manager, Tyrone. We have to get business done here. So
well, you're the last of that probably Great Crusade law, you know. So this has happened. A lot of the like brilliant players are probably left then. So it's more you and Mickey probably with the transition to the new cohort coming in. So it's Mickey's probably thinking, do you know what, Seán is still the leader, but I need to focus on the other guys because you've done it, you've seen it, you've overcome all that before.
Yeah, like I suppose that I also had the realization that I knew Tyrone was much bigger than Mickey Harte and Seán Cavanagh as well. Like, so I kind of knew that there was always gonna, like, I say I wanted to try and be part of that new team that was coming along. I always felt I'm an incredibly optimistic person as a person goes anyway, where I always felt we were in with a shout every year of trying to win All Ireland. So you were still striving to do that. But yeah, it obviously become more difficult. We had a couple of sort of lean years. But look, there was high points in the moment as well. I remember like in the wins we had in like 2013 going to the All Ireland semi-final. It sort of, I remember feeling very happy, and I remember a couple of pictures of like Mickey coming across and hugging me and stuff. So, you know, it wasn't all doom and gloom by any means. You were just able to, and right, maybe me and him were maybe a similar mindset, but like we're very competitive people, we're very driven people, and yeah, we were able to park whatever we really thought about each other on a personal basis. We were able to park that and just get on with things.
Seán, the retired, and Mickey now, would you feel like the respect for yourself is there with him, or do you feel now that, you know what, he's gone his own way? Do you feel where he is now, do you feel somewhat bad for him, or do you know what, I'm not involved anymore, I don't care?
No, like it's I'll always have the respect for what he achieved. I suppose in his final sort of couple of years with Tyrone, I know there's a lot of anger because I was in the Sunday game and maybe insinuating that there maybe had to come a time where there was going to be a change necessary. And
you were the first to voice that, though.
I was, yeah.
There were many Tyrone players in that Naughties team in the media. I remember Peter Canavan saying while he was with Sky Sports at the time that Mickey Harte deserves to go on his terms, and I will never question his right to continue as Tyrone manager. And there were ample numbers of Tyrone players in the media over those years that had plenty of opportunities to say what you said in 2019, which was you were implying that, look, maybe that race is run and Tyrone need to look a different way. You were the first to stick your head above the parapet.
I was, and look, as a person, I've no problem. I've no filter, Dave. Like I've always, whatever jumps into this mad head of mine, I'll always throw it out there. But I suppose there was a fair difference as well between the likes of Peter and a lot of the greats that played with me through the Naughties, because they maybe finished up towards the tail end of the Naughties at the start of the 2010s.
When Tyrone were still on top.
When they were on top. I suppose I was there in 15, 16, 17, 14, where a lot of those years things weren't going so well. A lot of those years, a lot of the younger players were maybe coming to me and saying, I don't feel confident. Why are we playing one forward? Can you not try and change this? And things become more desperate, and lads weren't all that happy. And ironically, like eventually when the change was made, I always knew there was an All-Ireland, or always felt there was an All-Ireland, another All-Ireland in that group that was being kind of led after I went in by the likes of Peter Harte and Matty Donnelly and Niall Slood and Kieran McGeary, those sorts of lads, Ronnie McNamee. I could see the characters and the quality that was within that team, and I knew it was a freshness might have made a difference. Ironically, yeah, obviously Fergal and Brian come in and they eked out their All-Ireland in 21. So I suppose in hindsight there probably was an element of maybe truth in what I was saying, that a freshness maybe wasn't a bad thing. But yeah, I was probably the first person to question whether Mickey should be allowed to sort of stay as a Tyrone manager, because again, I could probably see outside look, Mickey Harte or Seán Cavanagh owns Tyrone. Tyrone is a big county, a very proud county. But yeah, I was also very aware that I probably angered a lot of people, and a lot of people didn't like what I was saying, and a lot of former teammates that I played with didn't like what I was saying. But again, as a person, I felt it was the right thing to say.
I suppose for you, and again, you're the leader, like if a one plan doesn't fit all the time, so if you're doing it for X amount of time, the game evolves. And maybe Mickey didn't evolve quick enough for what the game was moving towards, or the structure of it. And again, if the way you're talking, if you become obsessed with that goal, of course you want to challenge it, and there has to be a bit of back and forth, and that's probably the frustration in hindsight yourself. It's not that you're questioning his motives but sometimes you have to go with the evolution of football as well, and to be a really, really brilliant team. That's what's happened, you know.
Yeah, and I think that in any team, and even you look at I suppose the Derry team of up to March this year, and the Derry team that maybe we're seeing the last number of weeks, I think whenever things are going well and there's that sort of unbreakable belief that you can win things, that team, when it's highly motivated, is a team that could go and win All-Irelands. And I suppose the more those lean years that I saw, there was a lot of guys that within that squad were weren't overly motivated. It was we were getting a lot of guys leaving the panel. We were getting, there's a lot of things that probably were very foreign to me, because I started in the midst of that wave of that sort of naughties. I come in 2002, had a year with Art and Eugene, then Mickey come over us, and we're all a young group that all just then for the next 10 years we felt as if we could take on the world. But after that period, then I saw a lot of really good players come in, and it kind of felt they were being stifled somewhat. I remember speaking about like Kyle Coney or Ronnie O'Neill and these lads who I saw coming in as minors, and they were phenomenal players, and you could just see their confidence being drained out of them night in, night out, and
knowing that when the team was being picked at the weekend, there was going to be one forward.
Yeah, and that environment just wasn't allowing them to flourish. And I suppose in the back of my mind, I was questioning that, going, okay, well, I think we can be doing. We possibly with a fresh approach here, it might get the best out of the talent that maybe exists. I always believed in the talent we had.
Did you bring those thoughts to Mickey, especially after these younger players are almost impeaching you to do something about it, beseeching you to do something about it?
I probably did. I probably wasn't strong enough in that sense, and that's probably one possible regret I had, is in I probably also know that Mickey wouldn't have listened. If I'm totally because when you he's an incredible man when things are obviously working well, and he puts us unbelievable belief within the squad, and that's what I could see in those Derry players up until March this year. I was going, oh God, they've got that bug that we had, and he's brilliant at that. He's brilliant at brainwashing you into thinking there's only one outcome here. You're going to win the All Ireland. But unfortunately, then whenever that belief starts getting chipped away, and you start maybe seeing outside the bubble a little bit, and you start to see things maybe aren't going so well, then that's where it gets difficult. And I suppose in some of those lean years, I saw that. In hindsight, was I strong enough to call it out and try and change it? I probably wasn't, but yeah, I think in my mind, I don't think it would have mattered. I don't think it would have changed.
If the plan had changed, do you think you'd have another All Ireland in your pocket? If you'd left the one plan, do you think if things had freshened up, not saying manager, but even style of play, to allow you and allow those guys that you mentioned to flourish a bit better? Do you think?
Possibly, although I suppose that, and you were to the detriment of this, that coincided with that Dublin team coming along as well. So like, it's hard to know. It's hard. Like, if anything, I would say we probably left more behind us in the noughties than it probably left behind us in the tens, because that Dublin team were so far ahead. Although, look, did I believe we could beat them in the semi-final, played them 17? Yeah, I did. I remember saying to Vanilla before that game, there's no chance Dublin's going to beat us tomorrow. Like, I remember that was the mindset I had, because I was in that sort of total belief mind space. So yeah. But yeah, that's the way it played out.
You've had to put up with an awful lot of bullshit over the years, stuff happening off the pitch, people kind of invading your personal life and your private life, and it can't have been easy for Fionnuala and your family, and a lot of that stemmed from that McManus tackle.
Yeah.
And
tackle or post tackle, because like comments were made after the tackle, so I think whatever. So
yeah, well, I guess if Brawley hadn't said what he said
exactly
on the Sunday game in the seconds after the full-time whistle, it would have been forgotten about pretty quickly. Yes, the calls for a black card for that type of a tackle in that All-Ireland quarter-final would have grown louder, and clearly they did grow loud enough to the point where that rule was now brought in, and if that happens today, you spend the last 10 minutes of that game in the bin, Monaghan probably win the game, because Tyrone, in a really tight game, are playing with 14. But when you think of the decision you made to bring him down and what you had to put up with afterwards, totally disproportionate.
Yeah, and I think in trying to sort of widen the lens and look at the bigger picture, I probably, anyone who knew me as a player, and you probably remember me, and possibly you as well, Lee, in the mid-2000s, I was a player that was pulled down more than anyone. So ironically, I was thinking, people are like, yeah, you pulled Conor McManus down, and I'm going, yeah, and if I'm honest, it was a calculation. Like, I made a calculation in my head. Is a yellow card worth it here? given the fact that the likelihood is Conor McManus is going to score a goal in a game that's probably going to be won by a point or two either road. So I made that calculation very quickly, and I took the decision to do it. I don't regret that one bit. And Conor has said to me many times, including after the game, I would have done the exact same the other end. So ironically, I didn't see the issue with the tackle itself, and I also believe the rule change was necessary, and actually today I believe the rule change should even go one further, and possibly if someone made a tackle like that, there probably should be a penalty awarded or something like that, or a professional foul, a red card given. So ironically, I totally knew what I was doing and totally knew the consequences, but
you sound comfortable with it, though. You're totally comfortable with it.
Oh yeah, no, that doesn't. And here I would do it again if I was playing tomorrow.
Absolutely do it. Why wouldn't you?
Like, you're the lad who fired a GPS at Dean Rock in the hope that he might miss a free.
A lot of that is taking the game in a disrepute.
but no rule was changed. No rule came in for it. But my point is, what Dublin do it. The great teams do what they have to do to win. And that's just the reality. But in this instant, or this example,
in fairness, I actually, and here, look, I'm not just saying it because I'm sitting beside you, I actually thought that you throwing the GPS was far worse than me actually making a tackle. As in, like, I was going, okay, at least everyone knew what I was doing. I was going, Lee's actually taking an object that doesn't belong in a football field ordinarily, and he's using it as a projectile to put someone off. I actually felt
at that time, are you thinking, where's the blowback on Lee Keegan for that?
And because Dublin had $1, so it was very much. So they see me as the, again, the sob story. But anyway.
So if Monaghan had won that game, do you think there would have been any fallout?
Probably not. And like where it got real strange for me was because, like, again, as a person, I didn't really see myself. And I still don't see myself that much as a sports person, as in I played the sport, I loved it, I won a lot of stuff. But like, I remember the real bizarre moment of like taking a phone call, and he's still a client of mine now, of a guy, car dealership in sort of North Coast, and he's a Protestant fella ringing me on like the Monday going, "What did you do at the weekend?" And I was like, "Well, beat Monaghan in a quarter-final, we're in the semi-final," and he was like, "No, it's all this stuff about like this crazy stuff you were doing," and as if like I was ready for imprisonment or something. And I was like, no, it's not that, it's not all that exciting. But yeah, the noise that was created by Joe, and like Joe's a master, and he's a very clever man. Obviously he's a master at blowing things up, and I suppose in those few days of the aftermath he blew it up to something that was...
There's nothing personal with you though at that stage in terms of...
There's no previous with you and Joe.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
I don't think so. Not that I was aware of.
Not to
anyway.
Go to that extent, or
no, I don't. And you know, and ironically, I remember like Joe would have done articles about over the years of. I remember actually reading one saying like Seán Cavanagh is one of the greatest footballers ever to play the game, and that was Joe come out with that, and then all of a sudden he could flip maybe a year later to he's an absolute clown of a man or something, but. I kind of could see it for what it was. It genuinely didn't. It didn't annoy me that much. Okay, there was always a little thing going, right, that seems unfair, but it was all the noise that was created around it that then all of a sudden my wife's family was starting to get sort of abuse about it, or my job and my clients were starting to make noise about it, and my family was starting to hear a lot about it. It was in the papers every day. I suppose that all that noise, and again, say the act itself, it didn't annoy me one bit. It was just everything that went around, and that was hard to deal with. And at the time, you never like to admit it, but yeah, it definitely affected me. And I would say equally then get into that semi-final with yourselves. It probably left me a little bit more emotional, and a little bit more was trying to chase something that took a little bit off my game. Definitely distracted me somewhat. Yeah.
Because the controllables around that are just mental, because you can't control some fool coming up to you giving you abuse, or your family. And when it gets to that stage, you're thinking this shite isn't worth it. Because I think that's going far beyond any threshold you could look at. Like,
particularly when you're an amateur, whenever you're an amateur person, you that invasion into your private life, or you as like, it should never impact on your family or your friends or your job or anything. That should be sacrosanct. But
you're getting phone calls from journalists who are looking to substantiate rumours that you've been having an affair, that Fanula's kicked you out of the house.
Yeah.
That's just beyond comprehension.
Yeah, and ironically, I remember one of those phone calls. Fidel was sitting with me, and it was on loudspeaker, and he was like, "Yeah, your wife's left you, and you're no longer living at home." And I was like, "She's actually here beside me." I'm not joking, and she said hello. So
Did you not ring Sean as well? No?
Yeah, like, and I don't know, maybe that's the start of online stuff and all coming in. And yeah, I suppose you're still seeing it. Even last night, I was getting those WhatsApps floating around of Mickey Harte's being sacked as manager, and turned around to Fanula and goes, "God, I'm only getting WhatsApp there, Mickey Harte sacked," and all of a sudden it was lies. So I suppose
he's still there. It's okay.
social media was starting to feed into the world at that point, and yeah, I certainly was in the brunt of it more times than not.
Was there any of that in Mayo?
Ours is very much just the All Ireland and the whole rivalry. Well, like it's hard to call it a rivalry. When we were playing Dublin, they used to remind us constantly about who's top dog, and until you win it, that's the end.
And the curse, like, you know,
curse, all that. But in terms of like
Within Mayo,
for me, no, like Aidan O'Shea would receive ample amount of abuse online.
I always felt sorry for Aidan for that.
Still
There's
does,
like,
still
Aidan, and people would often label him, and look, I probably never had a fraction of the sort of stardom and personality that he's carried with him, but I've always felt very sorry for the fact that, you know, he's obviously he's kind of like a good looking, cool sort of dude, and he's done a few sort of PR things, and all of a sudden it's thrown at him that he's gone out to try and do this, which is impacting on his football. And a lot of the time, I don't think he's got any that's gone against him, even with referees and things, where he doesn't get the frees that he deserves because he's such a strong person to try and dispossess him. But
yeah, it went tough now for himself at certain stages as well to play, and some of the abuse he took over the years. Like, again, I was very fortunate where I didn't see a lot of it myself personally, but from hearing a lot of Aidan's stories, and probably Killian to a degree, but Aidan more so than most would have taken horrific stuff.
He was an easy target.
Easy
for a lot
target,
of people.
yeah,
and, it didn't.
And when you rise to fame as quick from minor, like Kyle Coney was kind of similar at that time, Joe, and Aidan carried through, and then when the obsession with All Ireland, you don't get it, and the story, the narrative becomes more and more and more, and it's left wide open for him, unfortunately, with social media the way it is now. So
I think everyone always, particularly in your teams, people always were looking something to, you mentioned earlier, blame it on something, and it always was, well, sure, you know, Shay, you know, he didn't score 5 points there in All Ireland final. It's his fault. It was nothing to do with anything else.
Coincidentally enough, he equalled your record on Saturday night for most championship.
I actually heard that, and I never even. I heard. I was sitting, and one of the kids were racking around with a Batman toy in the sunroom I was watching, and I heard my name, and I think it was something to do with appearances.
So I think it was outfield appearances in championship, so he equalled. I think you're 89 or 80. Something like that. Yeah, he had the same amount on Saturday night. So,
but yeah, no, it was an incredible man that has been doing it for such a long time, and I feel he hasn't had the credit he deserves.
In some quarters, I agree, definitely. Yeah.
Sean, you've been unbelievable with your time. I just want to ask you one other question about where you are in the pantheon of these Tyrone greats, and it goes back to something that you said about Peter Canavan didn't want to be someone saying that it was time for Mickey Harte to step aside, and that it was so different for him because he was gone in 05, or say one of the players who might have retired in 07 or 08. And when I think of Brian McGuigan, a Peter Canavan, who's, you know, referred to as God in Tyrone, Mickey himself, Philip Jordan, the McMahons, these guys, they're beloved. And I don't get the sense that you are beloved in Tyrone. Even though you won more than them, you spent more, you gave maybe more of yourself, of your body, of your mind, of your soul to Tyrone football than some of those guys. You achieved more. You stuck with the team due to the age that you were at the time when the All-Ireland final appearances began to dry up. And if you had snapped your Achilles with Moy in the autumn of 2008 and could never have played again, do you wonder where you might be as a personality within Tyrone GAA? And you wouldn't have had the relationship breakdown with Mickey. You wouldn't have had those opportunities to be as vocal as you've been in the last 10 years. You wouldn't have those days where you were questioning tactics and sticking your head above the parapet, the phrase we used earlier. You wouldn't have had those lean years. You just would have retired a legend.
Yeah, and probably very aware of that, and like obviously it was never something that I kind of decided that I would try and be controversial. I suppose because of the type of person I am, I'm very aware that I'm just not very good at keeping quiet on things or towing a party line. But yeah, I would be the first to admit that I've said things that has definitely divided parts of Tyrone, and because I've always strived to get success, whether in lots of aspects of my life. I know I've probably annoyed people along the way, and I think anyone who knows me as a person, and truly knows me, knows that I don't think I've a nasty bone in my body, even though a lot of people maybe perceive, because they see a sensational headline that something I've said, or maybe something questioning Mickey or whatnot. But yeah, I am very aware that sometimes speaking out doesn't lead to popularity.
I liken you to Robbie Keane in some ways. Like, no one played more often for Ireland. No one scored more goals for Ireland. No one, you could argue, gave more to the Irish cause than Robbie Keane. And yet he's never spoken about in the same sentence as a Brady or a Giles or a McGrath or a Duff. Do you would you rather be...
I suppose and going back to maybe what I mentioned earlier, I probably never set out to try and be beloved either, even though growing up there's no one that I loved more than Peter Canavan. I wanted to be Peter Canavan because he was everyone's hero, but at the same time I don't regret speaking about things, because that's me as a person, and I know maybe a lot of people don't like me as a person, even at times I don't like me as a person, but at the same time, all I can ever be is be myself. Like the best advice I was ever given, I remember my uncle saying to me when I was quite a young man, he says, look, just always say what's in your mind, because no one will ever catch you out on anything you ever say. And I'd be the first to say it, anything I've ever said, as sometimes maybe as sensationalist as it appears. It's never me trying to be sensational. It's maybe me sometimes not having a filter, but at the same time, I would always stand behind anything I said, and sometimes that has marginalised me and has maybe jeopardised a legacy. First one to admit that, and maybe that's sad, but look, again, I never set out to try and be a sports star or a personality. I just wanted to play the game I loved, and I was probably one of the luckiest people ever to play it as well.
It's safe to say, I said just before we came today, I was looking at Roll of Honour, and like I look at legacy sometimes just for fun, and just from an outsider, like we consider you, Mayo, as one of the absolute top, the greats in Tyrone. Like, you don't have a Roll of Honour at that list of the high quality achievements and not call yourself one of the greats, and that's just
that does mean a lot. And ironically, I would say, and myself and Fanula would maybe go to random counties for weekends away, or Westport being one of them actually, but yeah, and I would probably get a lot more people from other counties coming to me and saying, yeah, you were a great at the game or whatnot, and that does mean a lot to me. I don't. That's amazing to hear. But
Dave, one thing, never do with him. Never let him select man of the match, right?
You know, the other thing I'm getting now as well, I'm now getting people coming up to me and saying, I know you used to play football, and I'd be like, yeah. It's Lee, isn't it? Lee. The amount of people actually start to say to me, you actually look really like Lee Keegan.
Don't insult me now.
That actually has happened to me a couple of times. I'm gonna have to change something.
You're lucky, I'm telling you.
It's just been incredible talking to you in this level of detail. And when you look back on everything in its totality, I don't believe you really enjoyed your career. You were obsessed. You feel that maybe you were too self-centered at times. You're not beloved in Tyrone as maybe some of the other players, and yet at the same time, you don't seem to regret anything. Or if I could give you the last 20 years again, like, would you change anything?
Probably not, Dave. No. I think that's just me as a personality. I think that's just me and I don't think I'll ever change that. And I genuinely, yeah. If I was to rewrite the whole script, I'd write it exactly the same.
And that is important. That the 2024 Seán Cavanagh is a much happier guy than the 2012 Seán Cavanagh, and despite everything that's happened along the way, you wouldn't change anything.
Totally. I genuinely wake up every morning and I'm so grateful for everything I've had in my life, and I still am, and yeah, I don't think that'll ever change. I probably don't judge myself on what other people maybe think of me, and I know there's a lot of noise and online stuff and all that happens, but at the same time, I'm not online. I don't get to see it or hear it, apart from maybe an odd WhatsApp that's fired of me, a screenshot or something. But
We'll
no,
send you.
that
We'll
doesn't
send you a
annoy
few
me.
bits tomorrow. It's okay.
Well, listen, we are so grateful that you decided to make time and come in and speak with us today.
No,
Thanks
Thank you so
del-
much.
Delighted to be here, lads, and keep doing a great job.
Thanks a million, Sean.
What a man Seán Cavanagh is. I'm speechless after
Wow.
that.
Thought it was just fascinating. I suppose we would have known a lot of stuff, but having him in person here, describing, talking about certain aspects of what happened. I know, Joe, I was quite raw a lot of it too. Just thought it was such a great insight into the real Seán Cavanagh.
Like I kind of referenced it during the chat with him that he has a lot of detractors out there, and I can only deal with somebody on their merits and what I've experienced with them as a person. And like he's as genuine and as warm and as open and honest a player and a person and a guy that I've ever met. I don't know where some of the stuff comes from. Like any deals I've had with him, Seán Cavanagh is just a really good fella to be around.
Yeah, and do you know what? Because his standards are so high, Dave, I think that's what might irk people. And he wasn't this guy to stand back and let substandards or lack of resources prevent him from what he wanted. And sometimes you might have to rub certain people or groups up the wrong way, and Seán was willing to do that because he wanted the best. And as he said, when he was obsessed with something, you have to do that. But in terms of opening up at everything, I just couldn't. I was in awe of it, to be honest.
No one could ever accuse you of not like pouring yourself 100% into Mayo's quest for an All-Ireland. And yet when you're sitting there listening to the measures he went to, waking up at 3 a.m. to turn on a machine that might shave 2 days off his recovery from an injury or something, are you thinking, geez, did I?
No, I
do enough?
I didn't. I relied on more stubbornness on the mates rather than actually doing the rehab and the bits and pieces. And yeah, like just finding every inch. Like it's funny. Like in Mayo, like Joe, I feel like I got well clapped at the end of a career. Where Seán, I feel, is still trying to justify a little bit, and for what he gave and what he done. Like I don't have half of what Seán's role of honour has, but yet when I look at Seán, I see him as one of the greatest footballers that ever played the game, and like. Most people should be in awe of what he does, but I feel himself sitting here, there's still a bit of a justification around him and where he sits in that list of honours. It's crazy.
And it's all because of the last 8 years of his career when the All-Ireland's dried up. And
for me, I'd commend him more because he was there during the greatness and he was there during the harder times trying to get them back to that level. And in some ways, he got them to semi-finals and you listen, didn't go from, but for me, that's a testament of the standard he set himself, and even bringing I know he's in the drier years, but still bringing a group to the cusp of that. For me, you can't ask for much more from a player.
And yet, for all the heartache and the personal stuff that he had to deal with in those years, and obviously he mentioned Conor McManus, and he mentioned Paul McGurr, and he mentioned Michaela. Like he should write another book. Like there's just so much in there, and yet he wouldn't change a thing.
I think we'll let the podcast look after itself from what we had. I think that was just, I really just found it brilliant, really raw, and that's the kind of personalities we want to discuss because we get to know the real person and what they were about. I don't think a book would do that justice, to be honest.
100%. Lovely way to sign off. That is episode 2 of the Square Ball podcast, powered by William Hill in the bank. And we're only getting started. We have an awful lot more to come, and we look forward to bringing you bigger guests, brighter guests, even more fascinating guests, if that's possible, in the back of Darren and of Seán in the coming weeks.